I see that your faith is growing more and more. How do you see faith? Well, faith has two dimensions. It has an internal and external, or it has a spiritual and a natural. Whenever you deal with things like faith, there's a spiritual component and there's a natural component. The internal component, external component. The spiritual component says that I can't trust God until something happens in my heart where I say, you know, I can't do this by myself. God, I surrender to you. Until that happens, you will not grow in faith. Until you get to a place where you say, I'm going to surrender to God. That means when crisis hits, I'm not going to revert back to pre-converted ways of living and doing and acting. When crisis comes your way, you're not going to go back to the bar. You're not going to drink. You're not going to go back to snorting cocaine. You're not going back to pre-converted ways. You're not going to deal with crisis that way, because in your heart there's a resolve. The resolve says internally, spiritually, God, I don't know what's going to happen, how it's going to happen, but I trust you. That's where faith begins. And faith then moves not only from the spiritual, but then to the natural. The natural is when the outworking of faith. How do people see that your faith is growing? Like Paul says, that your faith is growing more and more. What's the evidence of your faith? James gives us information when he says to us in his book, James 2 verse 18, he says, show me your faith without deeds or without works, and I will show you my faith by what I do. Faith then is seen by what you do. When you drove up to this campus this morning, without ever knowing our congregation, let's say if you're just a first-time person here, or if you've been here 100 times and you've never known Christ Church, you would have known that whoever is in that building, they have faith. Because to drive on a property that's 107 acres with big buildings, owned by a congregation, you know that there are people who believed God for something. These buildings are tangible signs of our spiritual faith. So those are the externals. When I go into your life and I see evidence of your strong family, of your burgeoning and growing career, and the stuff that you've accomplished, and the things that you have overcome that would have knocked down a lot of people. All those things are indicators of your faith in God. People can talk a lot of things, but I want you to know that your ability to stand in the midst of our confusing, tumultuous world, it is an indicator of your faith in God, that you have put your hand in His and you trusted Him to hold you in the midst of all our turbulence. Right now our nation is experiencing such difficulty, even economically. Just the last report in regards to the unemployment rate in our nation, 9.1% as of the end of August, based on the statistical information. And when you have to go through living in a day and an hour and a time like that, it lets you know that God, amidst all of what's going on, I'm trusting you. Even in our day, when you find that in some settings, it's even offensive just to say the word God, just to use the name God. And dare you say Christ, someone will pull you off to the side and chastise you and accuse you of not being politically correct. I want you to understand, Paul didn't live in our days. Peter didn't live in our days. God chose you. He chose me. He gave us all of the internal fortitude to be able to live in our day and to rise and shine in our day. I want you to understand, you need to give yourself a round of applause. You are a survivor.